Hey, welcome to this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series where we're going to be talking all about Halo mocks from that video game called Halo. So why are we doing an episode on Halo mocks specifically? I don't know, I found some cool Halo mocks and I wanted to do an episode on them. But also, I often get asked the question, hey Ben, where do you get your inspiration from? And typically my answer is always like, video games or movies. And obviously Halo is a video game. And so I figured I'd talk a little bit about how you can get inspired from video games. Whether that's you straight up building characters from the game, or just kind of taking notions from specific characters that you see in the video game, or sort of specific tropes or archetypes or whatever, and playing off of those and putting that into your mock. So we're going to talk about some Halo mocks, and also do that. Look at some of the cool stuff that you yourself could put on a mock that isn't Halo themed, but you can be taking those notions from it and applying them to your own stuff. Very cool. Alright, so let's begin with the very first mock that we have today, which is by Shadrack, and is called Tiny Halo Co-op. So this is a fantastic mock by Shadrack here. Absolutely love what he's done. Really, really cool hand design on the Spartans here. Something that's cool about it is there is kind of no hand design, but there also kind of is. This is built to a sort of slightly smaller scale than your sort of typical Toa, just sort of slightly. And kind of, I guess, to keep it in proportion, the hands are literally just sort of the ends of Technic lift arms there, which I've never really seen something like that before. And it's interesting because it kind of works, which is really cool. So a great way of thinking outside of the box and kind of playing with those different ways of connecting there. And, we see how the weapons are actually connected to the hand design even still. It does require the illegal connection, like with the energy sword here, kind of adding in the axle going through the hole in the socket's side there. But I think with the guns and a few other things, it's not as illegal, which is great. So interesting connection, great way of doing it, and awesome to see. I also quite like the funky head design here, using some of these shoulder pad pieces and some slicer feet and a trans orange hand there to kind of create that very iconic look of that helmet there. Very, very cool. And also really cool how that pop of orange there for the visor really, really shines on this mock. Really is a nice accent point there, really kind of makes the head pop. Looks awesome. And then, of course, using even more of those trans-colored pieces for the energy sword like that. Really nice design, simple but really effective. A great way of conveying those really iconic aspects of Halo. If we take a look at the leg design on this mock, we can see that it's actually almost kind of exclusively made using just hand connector pieces, which is a really, really awesome... Yeah, it's a really awesome way of doing it that doesn't require too many pieces. We take a look, we can see that the upper leg here, it's made using two hand connectors, and then there's some sort of Technic lift arm there connecting the two of those together, and that forms the basis of the upper leg. And then the lower leg there is kind of more ball joints and things connecting those hand connectors, and then you've got hand connectors on the side of it there too, that's also being used for armor. Even got hand connectors on the waist there. There's a lot of hand connectors, and yet this mock doesn't have actual hands. Ironic, is it not? But very cool. And I always recommend... In fact, I never recommend, but now I will. I recommend very much investing in a bunch of hand connectors. People have also said that to me before, where they go, hey, Kostya, I want to buy some pieces. What should I buy? And my typical response to that is just buy whatever and, figure out what you work well with and then buy more of that later if you're a bit more new to mocking or you really want to buy a bunch of pieces or something. But definitely something to always invest in is a few hand connectors kind of thing, because I very much noticed that hand connectors can be awesome to use for their actual intention of upper legs or arms, hands, any part of a mock. But you can also use it very effectively as armor for a waist design or a leg design, or just kind of any part of a mock, really, like we see on this mock here. I mean, even the head is connected with the hand connector there. So awesome idea to invest in some of those, because you can use them in a lot more ways than their original intention, which is great. And then, of course, Shadrack has also built a really, really awesome Hunter mock here. Very, very cool looking, looks fantastic, looks awesome. Love the gun design here, the sort of gun arm, kind of, I imagine, being made using some of those triaxle pieces to get that sort of three-pronged look like that. And then the little system additions on the side, they're a really nice touch. What a great way to add in a sort of accent point sort of thing. Very, very cool, very effective, very much a carbon copy of the source material. Looks super cool. So let's take a look at the next mock by Mike Neves, and is called Noble 6. Already this mock is super, super cool. A little bit more system heavy, but there is some awesome integration between your Hero Factory and your system here. Quite flawless connections between the two. The textures flow so nicely into each other. Looks incredible the way that that's been done. And even though, yes, this is a bit more of a system-heavy mock, I always recommend you putting in a little bit more system into your Bionicle stuff, because, like we see on this mock here, you can blend the two flawlessly and achieve some really, really cool stuff with system. So let's talk a bit about that. One of the things I love is the way that the torso's been done here, using some of those hinge pieces there. So he's able to create this really interesting kind of curved armor piece there on his shoulders. And, you know, we take a look at how that's actually connected. It's connected more so through the back, but it's just all these individual hinge plates and clips and things. And then when it actually kind of folds down to sort of the middle of the torso there, it's actually not even connected. It's just those two slopes sort of touching each other like that. But it looks like it all kind of flows into one. So if you want to create some funky, interesting angles like that, play around with some of those system hinge and clip pieces. And when you actually do so, you don't always have to connect them. If it looks like it's connected, you can still get the basic look that you're after, which is great and essentially what you need, isn't it? So awesome. Another thing that's awesome too is the fantastic color blocking on this mock. You know, having the boots be that grey, layering the colors like that, fantastic way of doing so. And then the way that all of the blue is on top of that black there, implying that he's kind of got a black undersuit and then the blue armor on top. Really nice way of layering those colors. It's a great way to not have any kind of visual confusion or any kind of cluttering with your colors. Really, really nice way of focusing on that color scheme there. Super, super cool. Another thing that's awesome too, these really organic, lifelike, just look in general with this mock, but also the kind of textures that he has here. So, you know, we take a look at the waist and the upper legs here, having these awesome Exoforce bad guy arms here to create the funky dunky kind of organic humanoid like thigh design or waist design there. Looks super cool. And while we're on Mike Neves, let's quickly jump over to another Halo mock that he's made. Now, I tend not to put the same person in twice in an episode, but ironically, when I was looking this up, there's not a lot of Halo mocks out there. So definitely have a think about making some of your own. Anyway, another mock by Mike Neves, and this is called Halo Grunt. So this mock was made in 2010. That's almost 9 years now. Wow. So of course this was made with sort of some of the older pieces and kind of has a bit more of an older style of building to it, which is totally fine. It's sort of a little bit more, I guess you could say, dated, but it doesn't necessarily make it a bad mock. It's still an awesome representation of a grunt from Halo. And also that's another thing too, you might have a collection that doesn't really contain a lot of newer Hero Factory or Bionicle G2 specific CCBS parts. You might just have a collection that kind of really only has your typical Bionicle and a few Technic pieces thrown in there kind of thing. So maybe this sort of style of building is something that you want to aim more towards because that's just the pieces that you have in your collection. So there's definitely a lot you can learn from a mock like this. I love the general head design on this, using that tire piece there to kind of form the front of the mouth. Very accurate to the source material, looks great. And then using those Borak arms there to kind of form the curvature in the face like that is super, super cool. And definitely one of the things that I'm sure this mock has done is, or that Mike Neves has done rather, is just study the source material. Just sort of play around with pieces and go, hey, this tire piece looks a little bit like this. I'm going to sort of put that in my mock there, and there we go. And, you know, we were talking a bit before about how to apply things from video games and put them into your own mocks, whether you're 100% rebuilding the specific character from that video game, or if you're just taking notions from it. You know, this cool sort of almost kind of breath gas mask vibe that the grunt has on the front of his face there. You could easily apply that to your own mock, maybe sort of change it up a bit and think, actually, it does kind of look a bit like a gas mask. Maybe I can make a gas mask for my mock. Or even could just be the color scheme of this kind of gunmetal and red. You kind of go, hey, you know, this is kind of funky. Yeah, maybe I can make a mock that has that color scheme. Yeah, small little fun things like that, always something to consider. So very cool. Let's take a look at the bonus mock, and this is a mock by Jack the Mad, and it's called Mjolnir. So I love the really compact lower leg design that this mock has. There's not many gaps in this thing. He's crammed in a whole bunch of little system details and dishes and things like that. Looks really sort of holistic and kind of like actual armor. It looks very sturdy and strong. It's just a cool looking design. And then using the tires there on the lower part of the lower leg there to kind of fill in that kind of a bit more difficult gap to actually fill in there. Looks really, really nice. Speaking of filling in gaps, I also really like how the torso looks here. Again, using some more dishes there to kind of fill in the gap that would have kind of naturally been there with the way the mock is made, but sort of finding a little way of attaching in that dish there to kind of fill in that empty space. Always a really cool idea to do so. If you've got some empty space on a mock, maybe see if there's ways to fill it in. You may not always need to do so, but like we see on this mock here, using some of these, dishes and various things, tires, all sorts of stuff, is able to kind of fill in a lot of those gaps and make the mock look really compact and beautiful. And kind of repeating the dishes all throughout the mock kind of creates some nice visual unity, so it's super, super cool. Also quite like the head design here, using those slicer feet that we were seeing in a past mock before, but using them for the actual visor part on the helmet there. Very nice way of doing the classic visor like that. Looks perfect, very much sort of resembles the source material. Very cool. And a little bit more system heavy too, using a bunch of slopes and things like that to get the kind of general shape of that head there. Awesomely integrated, both the system and Bionicle there. Very nice. And one of my favorite things on this mock is the lower arm design here. Very typical, just your classic CCBS bone, but it still looks pretty awesome, and it looks even cooler because he's filled in that annoying gap that you always have when you just naturally attach Hero Factory armor, and the way he's filled that in is by using a Throbot Slicer head there, and he's just sort of attached it with friction, and it's holding itself in there very nicely, and you kind of can effectively fill in that otherwise annoying gap. Super, super cool. Really, really great way of doing that. Love how it looks, and this mock is awesome, as were all the mocks that we had in this Halo-themed episode. So be sure to play some video games and have a good time looking and studying the characters and thinking, hey, you know what, maybe I can kind of apply certain things, whether it's color scheme or, funky head designs or funky cool weapons or something like that, and apply that to your own mocks, because it's easy and fun to do. That's it for this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series. If you want to submit your own mocks to the show, of course you can. You can do so through the email you're currently seeing on your screen right now. And also be sure to check the links in the description to the mocks that you saw in today's episode, and be sure to give those guys some love because they made some awesome stuff. Anyway, that's it for this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series. See you in the next one. Bye for now.